You are tuned into the Story Behind the Business podcast. I am here with my co-hosts Joe McDonald and Adam Bessie.
Yep.
And once again, this is brought to you by the Westlund Group and Agency Media.
Joining us on the podcast today, we have the president of Major Tom. Major Tom is a digital marketing company. They have offices in New York, in Toronto, and Vancouver. So we have Miles Sellyn on the show. Good afternoon, Miles.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
thanks for having me. Good to be here.
It looks like you're working from home, I'm assuming. Just how are things going? How have you been holding up the last couple of months here?
Working from the armory. So I got my blades on the wall. Wanted to keep well stocked just in case stuff really went off the rails. You know, got to make sure you have some home weaponry. I've been working from home now. God, I guess this is week 9 or something like that. Holding up pretty well with it, to be honest with you. I was always like not a work from home person. We had flex days and stuff like that people would take advantage of, but I think I used 1 in 2 years probably. Like I liked being in the office. I've really come around on it. Like I find I'm super, super productive working from home. Although I don't have a long commute to the office, even saving that time, working out at home and stuff like that, I've found I've just taken to it pretty easily. Definitely getting a little stir crazy. But my wife and I have a little separation in our apartment too. So I think that helps a lot that we're not kind of sitting on top of each other all day. Just curious,
we're hearing stories like Twitter announced the other day that they're now saying anybody can work from home kind of here on out. I don't know what your policy was at Major Tom before, but do you see that policy changing as, we are allowed that people are going back to the office, that maybe there's flex days or things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I think we're definitely rethinking it. I think a lot of, our policy has always been to kind of do what works most for our people. And I think what we've realized now and what a lot of our team have realized is that they can be really productive from home. So that, there's definitely still value in collaboration in the office and things like that. But I think we'll definitely be more flexible and try to reorganize our space to work best for what works best for people. We've already had conversation around what it looked like to have kind of like dedicated desks for people who want to be in office the whole time, and then have like flex desks for people who are coming in less often and can sort of like book them as hot desks, things like that.
Since we're on the topic of COVID, I'll ask one more thing. What's been the biggest hurdle to overcome
overcome 9, as he calls it?
What's been the biggest hurdle right now in terms of, you're thinking of booking hot desks, but in terms of productivity, like how are you, obviously we want to have the honor rule and think that everybody's going to be as productive as ourselves, but what's one thing that you guys have, as a leadership team, have found to be really helpful in gauging the productivity of your team?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little challenging. I think, generally as a rule, we try to be focused on outcome rather than output. So it's not like, where's the report? It's kind of like, what's the business result for it? I think the reality is that like everyone has just been slammed over the last, 10 weeks or whatever it is. A lot of the new business we have seen has been really tight timeline stuff. Like everybody is making really rapid shifts to their business, getting stuff in market. So across the spectrum of our services, it's all like speed to market has been a big aspect of it. So my perception of why we're being productive is like, we're putting a lot of shit out. Like a lot of projects closing, a lot of projects moving into sort of ongoing phases, just sort of crushing through work. We've also tried to make like those outcomes really visible. So that every time something goes live or every time a campaign launches, we're getting good results, like sharing that publicly in Slack, so that we have kind of good visibility as a team into kind of what we're getting done.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of stuff that we can talk to around, working from home and how you guys are adapting. The last thing I'll ask before we maybe get some more background on Major Tom and even yourself is, right now, you mentioned you're putting a lot of content out. Now, are you talking about putting a lot of content out internally? And have you guys seen a major shift at focusing on your internal marketing efforts, putting out content around your business? Or are you just completely talking about like project work has been pretty much the same as this has happened, and you guys have just been able to tackle more things on your client side?
Yeah, kind of both actually. We've understood that in a tighter market, we have to do more marketing. So we've really been kind of going all out in terms of how much we're producing in terms of content, how much we're asking of our staff in terms of distributing that content and helping get the message out there. I'd say we average, at slow times, like 1 to 2 pieces of our own kind of content marketing a week. I think we're planning to put out 4 this week. So yeah, and everybody across the organization is pitching in on that. So that's been really productive. And then, yeah, lots of stuff for clients going into market. Also had to sort of shift our thinking on, we usually put out a lot of kind of like, this is our company culture content. That type of content has changed a lot because we're not hanging out every day. So a lot of more kind of like staff highlights, what people are up to. Next Friday, one of our account managers, Ben, is going to be like an online mac and cheese class because he makes like awesome mac and cheese. So he's just going to like teach us all how to make mac and cheese on Happy Hour on Friday. So all these different opportunities that we have to interact now are like pretty easy to turn into content.
Awesome. I've been sitting here with that 50 Cent song in my head, patiently waiting, so I'm going to ask 2 questions, a 2-part question. The first is, you guys have been really aggressive in being able to react quickly and put out some major initiatives throughout COVID. I won't say COVID, I'll say COVID. Which has been kind of awesome. Which has been awesome to see in our space, because we know the work it takes operationally to be able to take a new service offering or an offer and put it out there. And then also have the operations in place to be able to execute when that starts coming in, like from, offering free services and audits and things like that to your guys' online store. Could you talk a little bit about how you made that happen? And then how that aligns with your core verticals that you guys sell? Like, were there any of these new initiatives amidst what is going on right now that maybe pushed you to develop some new processes and operations around the services you don't typically offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think at the heart of Major Tom, we really do pride and value and try to encourage that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think one thing I've been really proud of the team for is, as we went into this, everyone has reacted in the face of crisis with that entrepreneurial spirit. So it hasn't been like, oh shit, we're hooped. It's been like, what type of projects can we lean into? How can we do things quickly? I'm a big fan of the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Like, I believe that to my core, and we were put into a situation where like, hey, we got to innovate here and we have to do it really quickly. And we've had tons of ideas bubble up, tons of partnership opportunities. I think, when faced with the people either lean in or lean out. And there's been, hurdles to it. Getting an e-commerce store up and running with a bunch of products in the span of like 30 days was pretty nuts. But since then, like, we've launched another e-commerce store for one of our clients in like 2 weeks. Now we're launching e-commerce, for these restaurants in the partnership with Flipdish. We're getting those up in like 24 hours. So I think more than anything, the kind of mindset shift from it has been like, hey, this is in normal times, this is how we operate, but we don't have the constraints, or we now have different constraints than we usually would. So we have to change the way we operate at Fulfill and the way we even think about how we execute our process based off the constraints that we're now faced with.
Miles, I'd love to go back a little bit. I know that you were a partner in a company, Drive Digital, and at one point you guys merged with another marketing company to form Major Tom. I don't really know the story, but I'm very curious to hear about Drive and then how that merged and how Major Tom came out of it.
For sure. Yeah, so we've been Major Tom now for, I guess, like 2 years. It'll be 2 years in July. Originally we were 2 separate agencies, one called 6S Marketing, so number 6, letter S. They've been around for 20 years, founded in 2000 by 2 best friends who are still actively involved in the company, John Blow and Chris Breeks. And over that 20 years, they started off as an SEO company because SEO was digital marketing in 2000, but have kind of continually added services as services became available. So paid advertising, social marketing automation, really everything under the sun in terms of driving traffic to digital platforms. They didn't come from a creative background. They weren't really interested in creative or web development or anything like that. And so they ended up actually partnering with another guy named Colin Ansell, who together they started Drive Digital. So they were always sister agencies. They were separate brands, separate teams, worked out of the same offices, and shared some company culture to a certain degree. But the focus there was to have two separate brands because at the time, Success partnered with a lot of different web development and creative companies, so didn't necessarily want to cannibalize any of those relationships. I joined Drive when I think we were like 7 or 8 people. Took over running it about a year after that. And by the time the merger came around, Drive was about 30 people, Success was about 50 people. And we were both going in the same direction in terms of, what we wanted for the organizations. Like we wanted to do more strategic work, more kind of consulting based. We were coming in and helping people define solutions rather than just execute on the solutions. And it became increasingly odd that we were separate companies. We were pitching together more and more often. We'd spend the first 10 minutes of every pitch explaining why we were different companies, which felt like wasted time in a pitch situation. So as we were going through some repositioning exercises, we realized, it was time for us to come together, scrap both of the names and come up with something new. And yeah, it's been a trip that it's been 2 years, but it's been a productive 2 years.
Okay, so I gotta ask about the name then, because as we've been preparing for this, I can never get the David Bowie song out of my head as we start going, and I've been singing it to Adam all morning. Just curious where the name.
Hang on. We've been singing it back and forth to each other down the hall.
Because
let's hear it.
We've been saying that we've wanted to fly you guys with Sky for a while, and then weather didn't work, and then this COVID thing happened. And one of the great reasons we want to do it is because we just want to be able to say this is Major Tom to ground control. As you guys on the helicopter, we could film it. It is a cool name. I'm just curious how that came about.
Yeah, so we actually, as we were going through the repositioning and rebranding exercise, we actually worked with an external consultant. It's really hard to effectively rebrand yourself, like especially when you're merging, like it's just too close to it. So we worked with a guy named Chris Neary, who runs a organization called Frank Strategy. Awesome, highly recommend. But the name actually was pretty much the last thing to happen. We really settled on this idea of our positioning being around, time and space and perspective. So with that sort of central brand concept, we started talking a little bit more about potential names. And they ran us through a list of I think 15 names, just kind of like rapid fire. And we all wrote down our top 3 afterwards, and I think Major Tom was top for 8 of the 10 people in the room or something like that. We also really liked the challenge of eventually owning the search result for Major Tom. Pretty lofty goal to be able to jump David Bowie, which I think in most cases we have.
You guys are close.
He's not active. He's not actively, working on his SEO. So,
yeah, we were actually impressed because Adam and I did that exact exercise. We Googled it, and I was like, "That's kind of risky, Major Tom. Like, you know what? You're going to be buried." And I go, "No, we're there. They are. They're right at the top." So, well done.
Yeah, and haven't been sued by the ghost of David Bowie. So, call that a win.
Which is also a bonus. How did you get started? You said at the beginning at Drive, within about a year, you were running the company. Maybe give us a little bit more insight into that. How did you start as just a web developer, a designer? What is your background and what propelled you into getting into or running a marketing agency, or at the time a web development agency?
Yeah, my journey is really, sometimes I talk to students and they're like, what tips do you have? And I'm like, not a ton, to be honest with you, right place, right time kind of stuff. I was an English literature student, was really bad at that, did not enjoy it. Realized pretty quickly I didn't want to be an English professor. So my last 3 years in university, I actually worked full-time in hospitality and was managing bars and nightclubs. Shout out to the Lamplighter. So yeah, I worked for the Donnelly Group for a number of years, and then ended up skipping my university graduation to go to a music festival. At the music festival, met Colin, who ran Drive. Totally hit it off. About 4 months later than that, or later, started working at Drive as at the time was an account manager. I was the first account manager. Colin's like a real kind of like empowering dude. So we sit down the first day. I was like, okay, so like, what does an account manager do? What do you want an account manager to do? I was like, I don't know. Like, what do you need me to do? So over the course of the next year, kind of bounced around between project management, client services, and then ended up more so on the business development side of things, which is kind of where I really found my stride. And then after doing that for a little bit, Colin actually ended up moving on to found Red Academy. So I stepped into the managing director role.
Nice. I mean, that's and in terms of running a business, for some reason, I always thought that you were like super technical, because whenever we talk, and now it makes sense if you started as an account manager, because you have to exude confidence to the person that's on the other side. You had a lot of probably a big learning curve in terms of understanding the type of product that you're selling. So when you're looking at the space now, what type of approach do you take when you're dealing with an account or you're dealing with the strategy side? Because you definitely come from the school of trial by error, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I'm involved in a lot of strategic engagements with our clients. So my perspective on tactics is I need to know the why of a lot of them, but I don't need to know the intricacies of the what. We have an awesome team. Like, I'm never going to be able to understand analytics or like be able to know as much about UI design as our creative director. So, and I think a lot of agencies that come from a founder who has like a specific skill set background, it's often really hard for that founder or leader to kind of separate themselves from the work. I've never had any problem separating myself from the work. Like, the creative team laughs at me, like I would center justify everything. Like, I have a terrible aesthetic. But that's not my job, right? My job has always been to like find smart people, get out of their way, be able to help them articulate and sell the value of their work, and then put them in a position to kind of to thrive. So that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoyed doing. But yeah, when new stuff comes out, we have a pretty robust internal kind of like learning cycle. We have internal committees for different subject areas, so they do lunch and learns pretty regularly. So yeah, just really being exposed to stuff like that. Stay active in the Slack channels, just be reading stuff that people post, and make sure you know at least as much as the client does.
One of the things, Miles, that I've heard about you guys is that you take sales very seriously. And I know sometimes sales and marketing, that those two things don't go hand in hand, and a lot of marketing companies don't talk that way. And my understanding is you guys, have a, very focused on sales and acquisitions. Maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about, how Major Tom thinks about sales, how you guys acquire new customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sales to a certain degree is in our organizational DNA. When it started out just John and Chris, when it's two people running a company that is also your paycheck, getting new business in the door is like number one priority. So that's something that's always been ingrained in our culture. There's a lot of organizations that structure themselves like senior account directors and stuff like that are facilitating business development. Our approach has always been to have like a dedicated sales organization and dealing with that, so that our operations people can really just focus on the work. From a marketing perspective, we really focus on treating ourselves like a client. So we have a marketing manager named Victoria, who's awesome, who sort of functions as the client. And then we have an internal team that has like an account manager, has all these different specialists on it. So we, do the same kind of monthly and quarterly reviews that we would for our client. And ultimately, Major Tom, we want to treat like our most important client. The opportunity there is we deliver SQLs, and then the sales organization deals with the rest of that.
Just to follow up to that, So you have an internal staff that doesn't work on client projects, that only focuses on the internal strategy of Major Tom?
No, God, I wish. With their one client, it would be awesome to have like a solely dedicated team. But no, it's definitely, they have other clients they're working on. Our model is more kind of hub and spoke. So there's like an account manager and then a bunch of different specialists that'll work on an account. So one of our account managers that works on Major Tom also has other clients. Yeah, I mean, I think there's different ways to slice that up. One thing that we've found is that, what is it? The cobbler's kid has no shoes, or whatever that saying is. When we get busy with client work, usually it's the Major Tom marketing that tends to get pushed to the back. But we've actually organized this really nice internal system that, like, when we are forecasting out, hey, this person's actually going to be light on work for the next 2 weeks, how can we utilize them to either work on internal projects or dive into Major Tom's marketing? So like SEO specialist, okay, next week they have 20 free hours. Be like, hey, how can we rip through our site and provide like a bunch of action items that someone else can pick up later?
I'm curious to get your thoughts on, I heard them say, USA went from 1.0 to 2.0. We can never go back. The world has changed. From a marketing perspective, do you think the world has now changed forever? If you think it has, what are some trends that it have, or do you think 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road, it's the same as what we were kind of a few months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going back. I don't think that this state is continuous. I think like if you looked at what marketing was 10 years ago too, it was drastically different. My philosophy on all of this is that what it's actually just done is kind of expedited a timeline. So I think depending on the industry and sort of how it's been affected, we're probably 2 to 5 years down the road if things had progressed normally. So things like the digitization of services like mental health and things like that, we're probably going to get there. But now we're just like, okay, we're there a lot faster than we were expecting to be. Same with e-commerce, right? Like we all knew we were going to get there eventually. We've just probably expedited that timeline by a couple of years.
So what do you think? What do you think in terms of like a business who's now allowed to reopen, or their workforce is starting to kind of come off of being laid off, or whatever the case may be? What do you think some of these businesses need to do to get up to date with where we're going to be at over the next 24 months in terms of a digital economy in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, it depends a lot on the industry, obviously. I hang out with too many UX designers. It depends. I think like, for ones that are really hard hit by it, that like rely so much on a physical location, like gyms is the one for me that like I was reading, all these things, gyms can reopen in BC, and it's like, okay, but like with all of these stipulations. And so I think there's a big difference between like reopening and people coming back. Like the gym they're describing, I'm like, that's not really the gym to me. Like I'm not trying to go to that gym. I'm happy working out in my living room if it's going to be that. And so I think what smart businesses have done and are doing is realizing that these things don't need to be mutually exclusive. Like if you've had success running your online programs for working out, you should continue doing that. Like if you've opened up a new revenue stream, don't jump back to what it was before. Like figure out what your new reality looks like in terms of operating those both simultaneously. How can you cause them to leverage each other? How can you say for people who do want to get back in the gym, okay, let's build out a program that has you there 2 days a week and everybody cycles through those 2 days and then the rest of it's online. So you can still kind of build programs around it, things like that.
Miles, I've asked everybody this question over the last kind of 60 days, and I'll be honest, I'm getting tired asking it. But since you're kind of just touching on some of the stuff there, one of the things I'm always curious about is you're the president of a large company. You've got remote workers, you've got offices around the country and in another country. How have you managed mentally? Like you're working at home, you said you're being really productive. It's obviously been a very difficult and strange time to function in. What are some things that you've done in order to stay positive, energized, and still been able to kind of lead your company?
Yeah, I think ultimately in the broad spectrum of things, we're pretty lucky. We already had the infrastructure in place that we could pivot on a dime, get everybody working from home. We took a not insubstantial hit to our revenue, but not to the degree of lots of other businesses. So I think the number one thing is just like practicing gratitude. Could be way worse. And I think as hard as it has been for us at different times, like there are some people who are really, really struggling and we're not in that situation. So grateful for that for sure. And then probably stuff that you've heard from everyone else, like connecting with friends, getting exercise, sleeping well. So all of those things for sure. I play basketball pretty regularly, or used to. So my goal is to actually like come out of this and be just in way better shape than everybody I play basketball with, and just like ruin them for the first 3 weeks when we're back. So I'm kind of keeping myself mentally geared for that.
So Adam, I think we know now why he wanted to enter his team into our basketball tournament. He got a ringer.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I was saying that to Joel because we've been talking about basketball a little bit with The Last Dance. So I'm assuming that you've been watching the Jordan documentary, and now you can envision yourself coming away from baseball, which is your work from home, and going back into basketball and trying to redominate the field. Am I right?
Yeah, I'd say like I'm like a poor man's Scott Brunell is my game.
Which is still an admirable player. Okay, well, you know what, Miles? Thank you for taking time out of the day and talking a little bit of shop. Obviously, we could go a lot longer, but you know what? People just don't have the patience anymore. So if you've made it this far, why don't you let everybody know where they can reach you at personally and what they should be checking out online that you, besides your guys' online store, like what are some of the things that you would like to plug to our audience?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously www.majortom.com is where you can find everything about Major Tom. Tincan.shop is that online store that I referenced, a bunch of services on there. If you're a restaurant that is struggling with delivery apps and fees associated with that, go check out our offering on there in partnership with Flipdish. Until the beginning of July, we're setting restaurants up on that for free. So if you or someone else who's in the hospitality industry wants to take a look at that, by all means, dive in. And then, yeah, for me, LinkedIn's probably the best way to get in touch with me if you want to do that. Just reach out. Always happy to chat, especially if you're in need of some advice or want to talk through it.
Fantastic. Miles, thank you so much from everybody here at Story Behind the Business. Stay safe and healthy and clean shaven eventually from your hair.
Awesome, guys. Thanks very much for having me.